How do we know when we're living in a state of Satchitananda? And what is it that binds these three levels of life? Crudely put, we can say our street smarts, our intuition or our occult awareness, abilities, and our subjectivity. What brings them all seamlessly together? Mullah Nasruddin had many talents and many abilities, but he decided that he wanted to add that of being a doctor amongst them. So he went to the most famous physician in his place of residence and asked, could he become an apprentice? Well, the old doctor said, yes, you can come with me when I make my house calls, and I'll demonstrate to you what it is that needs to be done, and then it'll be your turn. So they got to the first house, and they were escorted into the room where a woman was lying on the bed. And then the old doctor bent down and looked under the bed. And then he stood up and he said to the woman, you have to give up sugar. You must give up all forms of dessert and sweet things. Now, while Mullah Nasruddin was listening to the physician give his diagnosis, he too looked under the bed. And there he saw lots of soft drink cans and lots of lollipapers. So they got to the next house, and they were greeted at the door by a woman, and she said, oh, I'm so worried about my husband. He's giddy and dizzy all the time, and he actually fell over this morning, and I had to put him to bed. So they go into the bedroom, and again the old doctor looks under the bed, and then he stands up and he says to the man, you have to give up all alcohol. You must stop drinking. And while he was giving this diagnosis, Mullah Nasruddin looked under the bed, and there it was, totally littered with vodka bottles. So they get to the next house, and the old doctor turned to Mullah Nasruddin and he said, well, it's your turn now. So they knocked on the door, and it took some while for a rather flustered-looking young woman to answer the door. But when she answered the door, the old doctor said, your husband has consulted me and told me that he's very worried about you. You always have a headache. So I've come to examine you. So they go into the bedroom and she lies on the bed, and of course the old doctor had said to the mullah, now it's your turn. So the mullah bends down and looks under the bed, and then he stands up and he says to the woman, you have to give up all forms of dairy, all milk products. So after they'd finished the consultation and got outside the door, the old doctor said to the mullah, well, how did you come to that diagnosis? Well, said the mullah, I did what you did. I looked under the bed, and there was the milkman. And then there was a man called Yankel, and he was very poor. In fact, his family were totally penurious. They were penniless, and he had no means of supporting his family. So he decided that he would have to leave that impoverished village to try to find some alms and a way of earning money in a far wider field. So Yankel left his wife and his children and set out. And he traveled far and wide. And after some long while, he was able to gather a lot of coins. So he exchanged these coins for paper money. But then he had to find a means to carry them with him because he traveled everywhere. So he began to sew the notes under patches on his coat. So after some long while, Yankel had a coat covered in patches. It even came to the stage where the collar and the sleeves of his coat was covered in patches, under which were the notes that he had gathered. But on a certain day, after some long while, he thought, it's time to go back to my family, my wife and my family. We can be rich now. So Yankel bought himself a beautiful fur coat with a wonderful fur collar. And then he made his way back to his home village. Well, of course, in putting on his fine coat so that he could now appear to be rich, he had his patchwork coat, which he made up into a bundle and carried with him. But when he got back to his house and he was greeted by his family, his wife was off. She'd had to go out and take in washing and scrub floors just to keep the family together, so she wasn't at home when he arrived. But his sons greeted him at the door, and they wanted to know who he was, of course, because he was unrecognizable to them. And he asked them, well, where is your father? And they said, oh, our father went away a long time ago and he's obviously dead. But then Yankel said, but I am your father. Well, there was great rejoicing, and a messenger was immediately sent to bring his wife home. Well, when she got home, of course, she saw Yankel's prayer shawl that he had always worn, so she knew indeed that it was her husband. So there was very great rejoicing. But after that rejoicing, Yankel decided that he would go to the synagogue to make his prayers and give his thanks for his homecoming, and he left the bundle with his patchwork coat just in the corner of the kitchen. Well, while he was at the synagogue and his wife was preparing a wonderful festive meal for them, a beggar came to the door. But of course, the wife had nothing to give him, and feeling very bad about it, then she noticed the bundle of the old coat sitting in the corner of the kitchen. So she gave it to the beggar. When Yankel came home, he went to the drawer to get a knife and a sharpener. And as he was sharpening his knife, his sons wondered what he was doing. They were quite scared, so they crouched in the corners. And then Yankel said, where is my coat? And the wife explained that a beggar had come to the door and she had given the coat to the beggar. Well, of course, Yankel fell down in a dead faint. And when he was revived, he said, but there, that coat held all our fortune. And then the wife fainted. But Yankel decided, and he put on his fur coat, and he went off into the town square, and he started to shout, I am a fool, I am a fool, I am a fool. And people started to come and think, oh, Yanko's lost his mind, he's gone mad. But he stood right in the center of the town square. He was, I am a fool, I am a fool, I am a fool. And as the crowd gathered, of course, the beggar, wearing his patchwork coat, came to see what was going on. And Yankel saw him and immediately went over to him and said, "Here, let's exchange our cloaks." And so all the people around thought, Yanko's completely gone mad. He's giving away this expensive, beautiful fur coat for this patchwork rag. But then the beggar, putting on his lovely fur coat and fearing that Yankel might change his mind, he quickly ran off down the road. But Yankel very happily, now wearing his patchwork coat, went off down the street singing, "I am a fool, I am a fool, I am a fool." And from that day on, the family lived like rich people. Satchitananda, existence, knowledge and bliss. Right now. Right now. What does this simple story evoke for us? Satchitananda, existence, knowledge and bliss. Street smarts, intuition, and oneness, interrelatedness that arises out of subjectivity. What does this story tell us, show us, evoke for us as an awareness of this, and in so doing indicate where we are, what this is, this seamless merging of life, intuition and oneness. Analyze this story, and we have those three together. Put them together.
What is coming up for me is that things happen to us in this life, and if we can kind of stay with it and not make a story out of it, but just be with it, then out of that comes a way of responding to it, which actually is the way of, like, the way of oneness.
Yes.
And so in both those stories, the person had an experience and then could have made something. Well, I guess the man who fainted first
Yes.
had his reaction, but then used his intuition to find, to flow with it,
Yes.
basically.
Yes, yes, yes.
And that buying that expensive coat was, you know, for appearance's sake. Got him
Yes.
into his deep trouble, didn't it?
Yes, yes.
So when you got rid of that, that was...
Yes.
But if he hadn't bought it, then beggar wouldn't have swapped.
That's...
That was intuition.
Yes.
Hope it only one.
Hmm?
No, no.
Yes.
Yeah, the wife wouldn't do it.
Oh, simply whatever is done, if it recognize, I don't know what to say now, in flowing with what was happening.
Yes.
It doesn't matter that it did, because there was a way to catch up, and
Yes. Yes,
it
yes.
doesn't really matter.
No.
It was in the time it changed the code. That was also part of the experience of life.
Yes. Yes.
Nothing to fear to make wrong or
No. No. But we can see that all of these three ingredients are there, working together, isn't it? In this. Isn't it so for us too, that we can see now?
And that what seems like bad isn't necessarily bad.
No.
I mean, if we don't make it bad, then
If we don't make it bad,
it's just an experience
it's
that
just
we
a-
then have to
yes,
work from,
yes,
to
yes.
move from.
to move from.
You could also say that what seems desirable. What you could also say what seems desirable may not necessarily be good for you.
Yes.
That's from the first story and the second story.
Uh-huh.
In the first story, you had to look under the bed and see what all the people were addicted to, especially the milkman, and what they need to give up to actually progress.
Yes.
And then in the second story, the illusion that I need to look wealthy to be wealthy,
Uh-huh.
internally and externally, was the illusion. And so he realised that towards the end, and then got rid of the carrot for the other place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Good interpretation. Mm. Thank you.